What's up, guys? My name is Gabe and welcome back to the Trojan Blade. Welcome back to a brand new video. So there it is. We finally have our defensive coordinator. It is former TCU head coach Gary Patterson. This is a move that definitely comes with some positives, with some pros. But for me personally, it is a little underwhelming, and I will get into why. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about Gary Patterson's philosophy, his scheme, and how I think he's going to fit into the culture and staff at USC. So before we do get into it, guys, if you are enjoying the videos, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, man, I really appreciate you guys being here. Now let's get into it. All right, so before I go any further, guys, let me know your thoughts about Gary Patterson down below. As soon as this video is live, I'm going to be down there reading your guys' comments. So any and all thoughts you have, drop them down below. All right, so Gary Patterson. Let's start with the positives first. So obviously, experience. There's not a more experienced coach on the market than Gary Patterson. He had a lot of good defenses for a very long time. Obviously, coaching in the Mountain West and the Big 12. Going to be a much bigger jump to the Big 10, a completely different style of offense he's going to be seeing on the norm. This is a guy that is the godfather of the 4-2-5. Definitely does it his own way. There's been a lot of branches and variations off of it, like we saw this last year with Deanted Lynn. So the base scheme is going to remain pretty much the same, but he plays his in a much different way, and we will get more into the scheme in the tail end of this video. I think another big pro is just the name and credibility. Like, he's going to walk into that defensive meeting room, and he's a Hall of Famer. He's the Hoff. Like, big deal, big name, a name that everyone really knows if you follow college football. Now, for some of the younger guys, are they going to know his name? I'm not so sure. The last time Gary Patterson had a relevant team as like a head coach was 2017. That was a little bit ago. And he's obviously been out of the game coaching-wise since 2021. But moving over to the cons, or the things that worry me, the things that have me not so excited about this hire. Like I mentioned, he's been out of coaching since 2021. That was his last year at TCU. It was a complete and utter disaster. The team was dreadful. The defense was garbage. And then the very next year, with a lot of those core players still intact, Sonny Dykes took that same TCU team to the national title. And things can run its course. There can be injuries and little caveats here and there. But when the last time you see someone is that bad, and it was 5 years ago, and he's been out of the game, I know he's been an analyst. Analyst is not coaching. Not the same thing. The fact that we were even able to get him, with the caveat of you have to keep all the assistants in place, and I am recording this before the actual news is announced. Got a text that it's happening, that it's done, so just want to have this video ready to go. So I have no idea what's going to happen with the assistant coaches, but the reporting beforehand is that he's going to be keeping all the assistant coaches. If you were going to hire a Pete Kwiatkowski, a Corey Batoon from Missouri, who's the guy I wanted, those guys are not going to sign off on having their assistants pick for them, because that's not what big-time defensive coordinators do. So, is Gary Patterson using this as a one-year springboard to get another head coaching job? That's definitely a possibility. He and Lincoln are very good friends, as has been reported for years. Not saying that Lincoln's hiring his buddies, but they are friends, so that probably made this a much easier choice. Because I know we're in a sticky spot, which is why I'm not trying to kill Chad Bowden or Lincoln Riley and just, really shit can either of them, because it's a really tough spot. If assistant coaches leave, our players are going to be very, very unhappy. So I get wanting to keep the morale up, the continuity, all of that. Totally get it. The problem is when your candidate pool gets down to a Gary Patterson who hasn't been in the coaching profession for 5 years, and the last time we saw him was a disaster, and Coach Henne, who at this stage in his career has no business being a big-time defensive coordinator at a school like USC. Not saying he can't be a great DC one day, but just right now for what we need, not it. Like, that just shows you how limited and shallow the candidate pool actually was. Because once you told people that they could not bring their assistants, so many of the candidates just evaporated. And that's how you end up in a situation like this. Like, do you guys really think top schools were beating down the door to hire Gary Patterson? And again, it could totally work out. He could be fantastic. I hope he is. But if you were a serious DC candidate, are you going to agree to have your whole staff already picked out for you? And those assistant coaches were just a part of an extremely below average defense? No way in hell. So those are my concerns. This doesn't seem like a big time hire. Like, if this was 2019 or 2020 or even 2022, right after he came off that last TCU year, sure. But man, it's been a long time since we saw Gary Patterson coach a defense and coach a good one. The further along he went in the Big 12, the more and more tape, the more and more games against, started to slowly tail off there at the end. So yeah, this hire can work. It can be a disaster. I don't know. No one knows right now, so I'm not here to tell you what's what. I'm just giving my opinion, but I'm not at all excited about it. I'm just not. I'm going to support him and root for him and all that, but does this make me more juiced for the next season against that schedule? Not really. All right, but just in case you guys are not familiar with the scheme, let's get into it. So, Gary Patterson is the forefather of the 4-2-5 defense. He does it in a very unique way. The entire tenet of this defense, the motto, the mantra, whatever you want to call it, and this is from Gary himself, it's to allow less talented defenders to compete with more talented offenses. So, theoretically at USC, and that was Grinch's whole philosophy as well when he was at Washington State, theoretically at USC, we should not have to be operating under that kind of mantra, right? We should be as, if not more talented than the offenses we're going up against. But the fact of the matter for 2026, we're not going to be more talented than the Indiana offense and the Oregon offense and the Ohio State offense. So in those cases, that philosophy and thinking could actually benefit us. Because I know a lot of USC fans don't want to admit it, but we're not going to be a super talented team this year. We have a lot of young guys who are very talented, but the guys who are going to be actually on the field just don't match up one-on-one against the offensive players of Oregon, Ohio State, or Indiana. Those are just the facts. So I think that could actually play into our advantage. Looking at the personnel, you're going to have 4 defensive linemen, 2 off-ball linebackers, 2 cornerbacks, and Gary classifies it as having 3 safeties, the strong safety, the free safety, and the weak safety, when in actuality, all that one of those is just the nickel position. So keep that in mind. Another interesting thing about this defense, the front, which is a 6-man front, 2 linebackers, 4 defensive linemen. And again, all of these conversations are just about the base defense. Obviously, there's different packages and different personnel groupings, but all of this is just for his base. The front and the secondary are called completely differently. They're not at all connected. They do not care what each other are doing, and they're completely independent of one another. So for instance, let's just say at Alabama, you could have a safety that has the green dot, and he's setting the secondary, he's making the calls down to the linebackers. That's not this defense. The two are completely isolated and operate as if the other one does not exist. They have their own rules, their own assignments, and they stick to it. Now, the number one goal of this defense is to stop the run. That is priority one. That is the main thing that matters. And whereas in the D'Anton Lynn defense, it's designed for the linebackers to come down and fill the hole and really stat pad and get a ton of tackles. In this defense, it's actually the safeties who come down and make the majority of the plays. Everything they do inside is designed to funnel the running back outside of either tackle so the safeties can come down and be hyper aggressive. The quote from Gary himself is flow hard and quickly to the football. Now with that front 6, you're going to see a lot of stunting, a lot of slanting. The goal is to create a ton of confusion. Again, very similar to Alex Grinch. The only difference here is that with Gary Patterson, we've actually seen it applied correctly and soundly. So expect a ton of movement with the front, especially those 4 guys on the defensive line. Now, this isn't the most aggressive defense in the world, but it can be at times. What this isn't is it's not a bend but don't break defense. The vast majority of the time, when this defense blitzes out of their base 4-2-5, it's going to be a cover 0 across the board, which is pure man coverage. And if you can't get to the quarterback, man, you're going to be in trouble. But one thing Gary has been very good at throughout his career is disguising everything he does. Opposing coaches in the Big 12 frequently talked about how confused they were, whether it was a man call or a zone call, and where the blitzes were coming from. And going back to how I told you how the team, the front and the secondary is divided. So there's actually 3 different groups on the defense that operate as their own little unit. So you have group 1. That's going to be the 4 defensive linemen and the 2 linebackers creating a front 6. Those 6 are their own independent group. And then you have the strong side corner, the strong safety, and the free safety, even though the strong safety in this classification is really just the nickel. And then you have the weak safety and the other cornerback as their own little duo. Now, getting into the coverage of this defense, and this is the most important part, the part that separates it from the other 4-2-5 umbrellas, the base coverage is a cover 2 read, which is essentially just palms. It's famously called cover blue by Gary Patterson. Essentially, in this defense, this is a cover 2 with soft corners. So no jamming at the line. This is a read and react defense. Take it one step at a time. And everyone is reading the number 2 receiver, who's either going to be the slot or the tight end. Usually the slot, though. That's what everything is based off of, and that's where they read and react. So overall, it's a zone defense, but they have man principles when those wide receivers turn vertical. This is a defense where everybody has to be on the same page and they have to follow their assignment. This is why everyone is grouped off. Because if you have these little independent groups who can just talk to each other, it makes the communication so much more seamless, so much more easy. And it really allows for things to flow nicely when you're doing pass-offs and when you're transitioning from that zone to those man principles. So again, you're not going to see corners up on the line. You're usually going to have about 6 to 8 yards of depth, and they could be playing inside or outside leverage depending on who's coaching it. And the inside linebackers here are going to be very important in pass coverage. Desmond Stevens is going to excel in this role, in my opinion. So the inside backers are always going to line up outside shoulder of the guard, and they're going to be playing hook to curl coverage, and their job is to reroute crossers. You'll see teams, a lot of the times, they like to muddy up the middle of the field by running mesh, and when communicated properly, this defense can be very successful against those routes. You're probably going to allow those completions, but Gary Patterson defenses always do a great job of rallying to the football. So for instance, let's just say we have the strong side of the field. You have the outside corner and you have the nickel back, both lined up on their receivers. The true corner has the outside wideout. Your nickel has the slot receiver. So that grouping we talked about earlier, the cornerback, the strong safety, and the free safety, with the strong safety actually being the nickel, they just call it that because it's on the strong side of the field. The true corner and the nickel are both going to have their eyes on the number 2 receiver. Their first step is going to be backwards. If the cornerback's wide receiver breaks it vertical, then that's going to turn into man coverage. Because the corner's eyes are going to be on that number 2 receiver as the primary read, if he hits a hook, if he hits something shallow, expect that corner to be hyper aggressive with jumping the route, because you're going to have that free safety who's back there in case you want to be super aggressive. So in terms of the coverage, again, it's pretty complicated, but it's a proven system that has worked for a very long time. The big question is going to be, we saw it in the Big 12 in the heyday when you had Art Briles at Baylor running 4 verts every play, when you had Lincoln Riley at OU, when you had Pat Mahomes and Texas Tech doing what they were doing on the offensive side of the ball. So how's it going to translate to the Big 10? Again, the overall scheme, we saw it ran at Michigan and they won the national title, but this scheme is not called the same way. So they line up the same, but there's a ton of differences between those two. And again, everything I went over was just in base defense. There's a ton of packages. If I got into all that, this would be like an hour-long video. But yeah, that's just some of the basic stuff about the defense overall. So I guess in conclusion, this is a hire that could absolutely work. Am I excited about it right now? No. Am I going to care if we start winning games in 2026? Hell no. My excitement level is irrelevant if this turns out to be a good hire. But my job is to talk about how I feel right now, and that's how I feel right now. If that offends you, as I've seen in some of my other videos, I don't know what to tell you. Go touch grass, I guess. Whoever wants to have like a legitimate conversation, comment down below. I'll try to respond to as many of you guys as I can. I'm fascinated to hear where you guys are at. Those are my thoughts on it. What are yours? I've seen a lot of mixed reactions so far. There's some people who are really excited, and then there's some people who are just like, oh my God, our program's over. I don't think it's either one of those. I think it's somewhere in the middle, leaning towards being disappointed, but I am happy that this hire was made if the only 2 options left were Gary Patterson or Coach Henne. Coach Henne could be a wonderful DC one day, just not this year, not with this job, in my opinion. But yeah, guys, that is going to do it for me today. If you did happen to enjoy the video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate you guys being here. You're all awesome, and as always, take care and fight on.